In a building made of glass and power, where the air smelled like espresso and ambition, she was a silhouette with a mop. Navy blue uniform, name tag faded from years of wear. Tall, tired hands, soft-soled shoes that didn't echo on the marble floors. No one knew her. No one looked at her. But Ruth saw everything. And one morning, just past 6:12 a.m., beneath the glow of an unkind ceiling, Lightsheet noticed a shoe, a single white sneaker, poking out from behind the elevator pillar. She paused, listened, then heard it. A sound so small, so broken, it nearly disappeared into the hum of the vending machine nearby. It was a child's cry, but not a tantrum, not hunger, not defiance. It was the cry of someone who had held in too much for too long. Ruth put down her mop. She moved slowly, like always. Each step deliberate, each breath even. She didn't say a word. She knelt beside the pillar, and there she was, Lily Carter, 6 years old, hair tangled from sleepless nights, sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, sleeves covering her hands, eyes swollen not from allergies but from grief. She was the daughter of Benjamin Carter, the billionaire founder of Carter Labs, Manhattan's golden child, Silicon Valley's favorite investor. But none of that mattered in that moment, not to Ruth. She saw the child, not the father, not the money, not the headlines. Just a trembling girl holding herself like no one else would. Ruth reached slowly into the pocket of her apron. She pulled out a small, handmade teddy bear. It was worn soft in all the right places. The kind of soft that could only come from being held, and held, and held. She placed the bear on the cold marble floor. No words. Lily peeked through damp lashes, saw the bear, and reached out. The crying didn't stop right away, but it shifted, from ragged sobs to soft sniffles, from panic to presence. They sat like that, side by side. Before we continue, please do subscribe to my channel. In silence, Ruth didn't speak. She just was. And in a world that kept trying to fix Lily, Ruth did something no one else dared. She stayed. You see, grief has a strange rhythm. It doesn't scream all the time. Sometimes, it just waits, quiet, heavy, and Lily had been carrying that weight since the day her mother died. 2 months, 8 weeks, 56 days of silence, rage, and withdrawal. She locked nannies out, screamed when touched, refused school, drew pictures of storms and shadows, and Benjamin. Benjamin tried everything. 6 therapists, 3 specialists, even a therapy dog flown in from San Diego. But Lily wouldn't respond until Ruth. And Ruth wasn't trying to be a hero. She was just tired of watching pain be ignored, because once upon a time, Ruth had known that pain too, and pain recognizes pain that night. Benjamin noticed something different. Lily didn't slam the bedroom door. She didn't leave her food untouched. Instead, she sat on the floor, sketchbook in hand, bear in lap. He asked gently, "Where did you get that?" She didn't answer, but she didn't turn away, which was something later. He peeked into her room and saw the bear tucked into her arms, and something cracked in his chest. The next afternoon, Lily appeared again in the lobby. She didn't speak. She just sat, waited. Ruth, wiping down cafe tables, glanced up, no surprise in her eyes. Just softness. She joined her, sat cross-legged from her apron. She pulled a plastic bottle cap, and without warning, she began to tell a story. Once upon a time, there was a bottle cap who wanted to be a star. No script, no theatrics, just a cap, a palm, a voice, and the cap waited on a shelf. Every day it whispered, "See me, pick me, I can be something." More. Lily listened. She didn't blink. Much just stared, but something in her breathing changed. Slower, deeper. Ruth's story went on. The cap rolled across tables, leapt off spoons, danced across coffee trays, and when it ended, Lily smiled. Not fully, not brightly, but enough to make Ruth's chest ache. Enough to make Benjamin, watching on the hidden lobby camera, drop his pen. His daughter hadn't smiled in weeks. But she smiled for the janitor, and he didn't know whether to feel relief or shame. The next day, Lily was already waiting. Same spot, same who, same quiet Ruth had arrived. They sat, and the stories continued. About a fox who learned to cry, about skies that whispered to lonely trees, about broken spoons that dreamed of being ships. No books, no guides, just presence. By the end of the week, even the cafe staff noticed. The manager, the one who barked about spills, began leaving a small warm milk at their table. No charge, just cinnamon and kindness. And always. Lily held the bear. Always. Upstairs, Benjamin watched, listened, and watched. And for the first time in months, he hoped the cook's voice trembled just slightly. "I'm just the kitchen helper, sir." The room held its breath. Even the oil in the fryer seemed to stop bubbling. His words echoed gently in that silence, fragile as if unsure of whether he had the right to say them at all. The well-dressed man slowly stepped forward. He didn't blink, didn't smile. He simply asked in a calm voice, "You made that stew?" The kitchen helper nodded. His hands, roughened by years of hard work, were still slightly red from the heat of the stove. "Yes, sir." A long silence stretched again, thin as thread. Then, with no warning, the man clapped once, a sharp sound, crisp, deliberate. "I've been chasing that taste for 37 years, the chef blinked. "Sir?" The man's eyes, once unreadable, now carried the weight of memory. 37 years ago, I was a boy in a village like yours, hungry, often alone. There was a woman, an old one. She made stew like this, rich, earthy, soulful stew. Every Sunday, she'd leave a bowl out on her doorstep. No names, no questions, just food. He paused. I never found out who she was, but that taste stayed with me. I've eaten in Paris, Milan, Tokyo, Michelin stars, private chefs. None of them came close. He slowly exhaled, until now. The kitchen helper said nothing. He was still. "Barely breathing, sir." The manager tried to cut in awkwardly. "Smiling, this man just helps. I mean, we have our trained staff, if you'd like, our head chef." The man raised a hand. "I don't want training. I want soul." He turned to the kitchen helper. "I need you to come with me." The room gasped. I can't," the helper whispered. "This is my home, my life. I'm not asking you to leave it," the man said. "I'm asking you to share it." He pulled a small card from his coat pocket. Heavy paper, gold embossed. The kind you never throw away. This is the address of a place I built. It's not open to the public. Only a few people eat there. World leaders, royalty, but we don't chase fame, chase memory. He looked the man square in the eyes. "If you ever want to feed hearts, not mouths, come, find me." And with that, he placed the card gently on the kitchen counter, adjusted his coat, and walked out. No fanfare, no last glance, just quiet steps fading into the hallway. The diner didn't speak for several minutes, not a single sound. Eventually, the helper walked over and picked up the card. He turned it in his hand, felt its weight. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just whispered almost to himself, "She taught me that stew." The card sat untouched on his bedside table that night. Its edges shimmered faintly in the glow of the old lamp, catching light like it was made of something more than paper, like it was carrying a world of possibility in something so small. So silent, he didn't sleep much. He sat with his thoughts, still wearing the same apron, stained with broth and time. The scent of herbs lingered on his fingertips, like whispers of a past he had never spoken of aloud. For hours, he stared at the ceiling, not thinking of the man, not even of the card, but of her. The woman with tired hands and a humming voice. The one who had stirred that pot on a single-burner stove in a little clay kitchen in a village no one could ever find on a map. She used to say food is not for filling bellies, that's for filling silences. He'd watched her as a boy through the cracked door. Quietly. Always quietly. Never interrupting. Just watching how she moved. how she poured herself into every ladle. And when she passed, no one kept her recipes. No one even looked, except him. He wasn't trained. He never wore a white coat, but every day after school he'd sneak into that same kitchen. And he'd try over and over, till one day the stew didn't just smell like hers, it felt like hers. Warm, patient, safe. He never told anyone. Not until. Morning sunlight crept slowly through the diner's front windows. Golden, forgiving light, the kind that makes everything look softer than it is. He moved a little slower that day. Still cooked breakfast, still refilled sugar. Jars still scraped the grill, but in his chest, something stirred. A quiet movement, like the shift of wind before the rain. Maya, the young waitress who'd always known there was more to him, noticed. "You okay?" she asked, pouring coffee into chipped mugs. He nodded, just thinking about last night. He looked up. She smiled, a little nervously. "You're kind of a local hero now, you know." "People are talking. That man, he was someone important, wasn't he?" "I suppose," he said simply. "What did he say to you?" He paused, then gently said, he remembered something. She tilted her head. "Something like what?" He smiled faintly. "A bowl of stew." From his childhood, she blinked. "And yours tasted like it." He didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "Memory is a flavor. It's the only one that never spoils." By evening, the card was gone from his nightstand. Not because he had thrown it away, but because it now lived in his wallet, tucked behind old receipts and loyalty stamps from the donut shop across the street. He didn't plan to use it. Yet, maybe not ever. But he couldn't bring himself to let it go. That night, as he prepared to lock the diner, Maya stopped him again. "There's a couple outside asking for you," she said, almost whispering. "They said they drove 2 hours." He furrowed his brow. This late they heard about the stew. He sighed, hesitated, but opened the door again. 2 strangers stepped in, tired, weather-worn. A man and a woman holding hands like the world was too big without each other. They didn't look rich. They didn't look like they came for prestige. They came for something else. He welcomed them with a tired nod. "Kitchen's closing soon." The woman said, almost in a hush, "We'll take whatever you've got left." He made them a bowl. Not fancy. No garnish. Just what he had. A bit of stew, warmed gently, spooned into old ceramic bowls. Served with half a piece of bread each. They didn't speak as they ate, but they cried quietly, like the food had unlocked something they hadn't felt in years. When they were done, they stood to leave. The man pulled out a few crumpled bills. "No charge," the cook said. The woman placed her hand over his, gently pushing the money back. Her voice trembled. "My mother used to make something like this. She passed last year. I never thought I'd taste it again." The cook didn't answer, just nodded. Sometimes silence is all that's needed, back in his small apartment. He sat again at the table, the card in his hand now. He read the name on it, the memory room, and beneath it, in small letters, where the past is always warm. He turned it over, an address. No city, just a location. Coordinates. He traced them with his thumb. Then he exhaled slowly, the kind of breath you don't realize you've been holding for years. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't about fame. Maybe it was about being found. He placed the card back in his wallet, this time closer to the front, and as he slipped into bed, with the night breeze whispering through the window, he whispered to the stars, "Maybe it's time," he whispered. "She taught me that, Stu." For a long moment, he just stood there, staring at the card, as if her spirit were in the ink, as if her memory had returned in the taste. Someone gently touched his elbow. It was Leela, the young waitress who'd watched the whole scene from behind the soda machine, her eyes wide. "Was it your mother?" she asked softly. He looked up, shook his head. "No," he said, his voice quiet and heavy with something older than sadness. "She was just an old woman. No blood, no name. But when I had no home, no voice, no shoes, she gave me a bowl of stew every Sunday. Never asked anything in return." Looked around the kitchen now, the rusty pans, the ticking clock, the worn floor tiles, and he whispered again, "I've been trying to repay her ever since." Lila didn't know what to say, so she stayed silent, and that silence became comfort, not awkwardness. Outside, the last of the SUVs pulled away, and the soft rain started again. Not the angry kind, but that gentle hush that wraps the world like a blanket. The kitchen resumed, bit by bit. Something had changed. The manager, still trying to process what had happened, peered in and said with a nervous chuckle, "Well, let's get back to work, huh? Can't let a little drama stop the lunch rush." But no one laughed. Back in the break room, the helper sat quietly. He held the card in both hands, gently running his thumb over the name engraved in gold. The name was simple. Maison de Souvenir. He'd heard of it once. Rumored in whispers, a place where billionaires waited months for a seat, where no phones were allowed, and where the menu changed with the memories of the chef. He could feel his heartbeat in his fingertips. He wasn't sure if he belonged there, wasn't sure if he even wanted to go. But that night, after the diner closed and the last of the dishes were scrubbed clean, he walked home under the drizzle, each step soft like a lullaby sung by the earth itself. He lived alone in a small apartment just above the laundromat, a place that smelled of steam and detergent. Where the windows rattled in the wind, he sat by the tiny kitchen window, lit only by the flicker of the streetlight outside, and opened the old leather notebook he'd kept for years. Inside were hand-scribbled recipes not from schools or books, but from moments. The stew his neighbor made after her husband passed. The flatbread a traveler once traded for shelter. A soup made for a sick child who later left him a crayon drawing his payment. Each recipe was a person, a time, a feeling. He ran his fingers over a page near the middle. The ink there had bled from tears once. It read, "Sunday stew, her whey beans soaked overnight. Bay leaf, only one. Onions cut slow, not fast. Salt after the boil, not before. And always, always let it rest before serving. Food needs time to remember." He closed the notebook and stared at the ceiling. He thought about the boy he once was, barefoot, lost, hungry.
Oh.
Someone had fed him without asking why. How now, decades later, a stranger had recognized that same act of love. On a spoon, could it be that food really did carry souls? The card still sat on the counter. He didn't reach for it. He just whispered to the night, what would she have done? And somewhere deep in sleep's waiting arms, he heard her voice, soft, worn, kind. Feed them. That's all you ever needed to do. The next morning came quietly. No alarm. No knocks. Just the amber light of dawn slipping in through the cracked blinds. Falling across the card, still sitting on the counter like it had been waiting all night, he rose slowly, knees stiff from years of standing, hands creaking as he stretched. There was no urgency in his movements, only the kind of calm that comes when life has already shown you its sharpest edges. He didn't touch the card. Not yet. Instead, he brewed a pot of tea the way he always did. Crushed cardamom, a slice of ginger, and a spoon of honey stirred gently, as if waking the flavors from a dream. He sat with the steaming cup, cupped in both hands, and watched the city begin to move outside. Children dragged backpacks too big for their frames. Shopkeepers unlatched rusted shutters. The flower vendor across the street, always first to set up, arranged carnations and roses in water buckets, like they were rare jewels. The world carried on, and so would he. But something had shifted in him. Not ambition, not pride. Something. Simpler purpose. That afternoon, back at the diner, he stepped into the kitchen a few minutes early. No one noticed at first. Lila was tying her apron. The fry cook was yelling about inventory again. The dishwasher was already elbow-deep in suds. He moved like he always did, quietly, gently, like background music. But this time, he brought something new with him, a bundle wrapped in cloth. He waited until lunch rush passed, till the clatter died down and the last few regulars were sipping coffee with nowhere else to be. Then, wordlessly, he unwrapped the bundle on the back prep table. Inside, chopped celery, soaked beans, diced onions, bay leaf, peppercorns, stock made the night before. A pot already warm from the walkover was ready to begin. The smell crept into the kitchen slowly, like a memory you didn't know you'd forgotten. Lila was the first to notice. She turned toward the back table, nose twitching. "What is that?" He didn't look up, stirred the pot, and said, "Lunch." The manager poked his head in, annoyed at first, no one authorized, then stopped mid-sentence, eyes narrowed. He sniffed the air. "That's not from our menu." "No," the helper said calmly. "But it should be." The staff watched him ladle the stew with practiced reverence, placing one bowl gently beside the next. There were no garnishes, no showy plating, just warmth, depth, a scent that made your chest feel less hollow. He didn't ask anyone to eat, but they did, one by one, and something unspoken passed between them, a hush not born of awkwardness, but reverence. Lila took a spoonful and froze, her eyes filled with something she couldn't explain. "My grandmother used to make this," she whispered, "before she forgot who I was." The dishwasher said nothing, just ate quietly, slower than usual, like he didn't want it to end. The fry cook, rough around the edges, scoffed at first, but his second spoonful came quicker than the first. By the end of the hour, the entire pot was gone. Even the manager, who tried to pretend he was just tasting for safety, found himself scraping the bottom of the ladle. No one clapped. No one cheered. But they looked at him differently. He wasn't just the helper anymore. He was the keeper of something sacred. That evening, after the last plate had been stacked and the lights turned off, Lila lingered behind. She found him out, back, washing out the empty pot under a slow faucet. She hesitated, then said, "You're going to call them, right?" "The restaurant." "That card." He didn't look up, just kept scrubbing, as if trying to wash away the thought itself. "I don't know," he said softly. "That world, it's not mine." Lila stepped closer. "Why not? You think you need a fancy coat? A diploma? You made people cry today, and not one of us even knew why." He dried the pot slowly, then finally turned to her. "I'm not chasing stars," he said. "I'm just trying to keep one small flame alive." She held his gaze, then smiled gently. "Maybe that's exactly what they need." He didn't answer, just looked at the card still tucked in his apron. The edges were frayed now, but the invitation still gleamed, like it had been waiting for him all along. That night, as the rain returned, softer than before, he stood by the window again. Notebook open, pen in hand, he wrote, not a recipe, but a thought. When you cook with memory, you're not feeding mouths. You're feeding ghosts, and sometimes they feed you back. He smiled to himself, then reached for the phone. The next morning came quietly, with a faint pink glow slipping through the window slats and the scent of distant bread from the bakery downstairs. He hadn't slept much, but not from worry. A stirring, he got up, put water to boil, and watched the steam curl like a ghost dancing. The card still sat untouched on the counter, but now it didn't feel like a mystery. It felt like a turning page. That afternoon, the diner hummed again with the usual clang of plates and grumbles of impatient customers. Nothing had changed outwardly, but Lila noticed it. The way he moved, calmer, more certain, as if he was cooking, not to serve, but to speak. At 3:42 p.m., a black sedan parked outside the diner. One man stepped out, not a driver, not a bodyguard, just an older gentleman in a cream suit and soft eyes. He came in, looked around, then approached the counter. "Is it true?" he asked the hostess. She blinked. "Is what true, sir?" "That the stew from Maison de Souvenir was served here yesterday?" The whole diner fell silent again. Silent again. Lila turned to the back where the helper no. The cook was wiping down the prep table. "Someone's here for you," she whispered. He came out quietly. Wiping his hands on his apron, the man in the cream suit stood tall, but respectful. "Sir, I am one of the co-founders of Maison de Souvenir. We believe that food is memory. The deepest emotions can be tasted." The cook said nothing, the man continued. "What you made yesterday, it awoke something." We traced the flavor. "The signature, we were shocked to find it came from a diner. We don't offer jobs lightly, sir. But we'd like you to come speak with our board. Still the cook didn't reply. Looked down at his hands, calloused, burned, stained, not chef hands. The man seemed to sense his thoughts. We don't care for resumes. Or Michelin stars. Just one question. Would you be willing to tell your story through food? The cook thought of the stew again. The nights he'd gone without, the hands that once fed him, and the hands he had now. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he turned around, stepped into the kitchen, pulled out the old notebook. He turned to a page in the middle, one smudged by oil and time, and began chopping onions. No one said a word. The man in the cream suit watched. Then slowly took a seat. Lila brought him water. Outside traffic passed, horns honked. But in the diner, something ancient was happening. A story was being told, and when the bowl was finally placed before the gentleman, and the first spoonful lifted to his lips, his eyes closed. Not from taste, from memory, he whispered. That's the soup my grandmother made. I haven't tasted it in 40 years. The cook only nodded because he knew. It was never about impressing anyone. Not fame. Not reward. It was about remembering, honoring. He didn't need to say yes to the invitation he already had. The co-founder sat quietly, still reeling from the taste. He didn't rush to speak. He let the feeling sit in his chest like warm tea. On a cold morning, then softly, Maison de Souvenir has many chefs, but none who can cook memory. The cook, still unnamed to most, set the empty pot down in the sink and removed his apron. He looked at the man, his eyes calm but unreadable. I'm not a chef, he said finally. The co-founder smiled. Exactly. There was a long pause. Then the man added, the offer still stands. Come for a week. Cook what you like. You owe us nothing. But I believe you have something the world needs. The cook didn't say yes, didn't say no. He simply nodded, as if accepting the next page in a book already written. The next few days passed quietly in the diner, but the air had changed. Isla noticed first, then the regulars. Something more intentional had crept into the space. The scrambled eggs were fluffier, the soup more tender. The toast always perfectly crisp, and every evening. After closing, the cook would sit by the window with that old notebook, sketching, writing, erasing, remembering. On Friday, he packed a small bag, barely anything at all. No chef's coat, no knives, just the notebook. And a folded photograph of his mother, taken when he was a child. She was laughing while stirring a pot. The corners of the photo were worn from being held too many times. He arrived at Maison de Souvenir on a Sunday morning. The building stood like a cathedral of food, all glass and quiet whispers. But inside, it didn't feel snobbish or cold. It felt sacred, like a library of taste. They gave him a small kitchen, away from the main floor. No pressure, no crowd, just space too. Cook, 1 week. That was the promise. The first day, he made a rice dish his mother used to cook when money was tight, boiled with a cinnamon stick, butter, and cloves. The head chef tasted it and paused. This reminds me of when I was 10. Kitchen in Morocco. The cook didn't respond. He didn't need to. The second day, he roasted root vegetables the way the street vendors did in his childhood town. Over charcoal, the salt rubbed between his palms before tossing. One of the interns teared up eating it. I didn't know carrots could taste like this, she whispered. By day 4, whispers had spread across the restaurant. Not of complexity or haute cuisine, but of something missing in food these days. Emotion, simplicity, soul. On the 6th day, the board members gathered quietly in the tasting room. No ceremony, no cameras. He served a stew, the same one from the diner, but this time it carried something new, not just memory, but hope. After the final spoonful, the oldest board member leaned back, wiped a tear, and said, "This man doesn't cook. He heals." That night they offered him a permanent position, a full team, a tasting menu designed by him. He thanked them, but said, "I appreciate it, but I can't stay." The room froze. "I'm not supposed to be here. I was meant to pass through." "My story doesn't end in a palace," he said gently. "It began in a broken kitchen, and there's a little diner, Where others like me still walk in hungry, not just for food? He smiled. Let me go home. He didn't argue, because they understood. He returned to the diner on a cloudy Wednesday, just as quietly as he'd left. But when he walked in, it wasn't the same. Neither was the diner. Leela had put up a tiny chalkboard above the counter while he was away. He read, "Meals that remember." No menu, no specials, just those 3 words. And from that day on, people came from all over. Not for Instagram pictures, not for Michelin stars, but because someone had told them there's a place just off the highway where the food tastes like something you forgot you missed. In the weeks that followed, the diner changed, not in appearance, but in presence. People didn't rush in with phones out. They entered slowly, like they were stepping into a memory they hadn't lived yet. Strangers spoke softer here. Children somehow stayed quiet, as if the walls themselves asked for gentleness. The cook never advertised, never expanded, never raised prices. But word spread, like it always does when something true finds its voice. One day a young man arrived. He looked nervous, sat near the window where the cook usually watched the rain. When Lila brought over a glass of water, the young man whispered, "Is it true?" She tilted her head. "What part?" He fidgeted with his sleeve. "That, if you eat here, it reminds you of someone you miss." Alila smiled softly. "Only if you're ready." He nodded, then quietly ordered whatever the kitchen felt like making. That afternoon, the cook prepared a bowl of lentil soup with turmeric, a splash of lemon, and toasted cumin on top. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. The young man took one, bite and stilled. Then his shoulders shook. He began to cry. Not loud, not broken. Just the soft weeping of someone remembering the last time they were truly loved. "I haven't tasted this since my grandmother passed," he whispered. The cook said nothing. He didn't need to. Each day someone new came, a woman who hadn't eaten since losing her job, a man whose daughter hadn't spoken to him in years, a teenage girl with scars on her arms. They came quietly, sat down, hesitated, then ate, and somewhere between the first and last bite, something melted inside them. It wasn't magic. It was memory. Tenderness. The kind of nourishment that doesn't just fill your stomach, it mends the ache behind your ribs. One evening, as the cook was wiping down the counter, Leela asked gently, "Do you ever wonder why you can do this? Why your food reaches people like that?" The cook paused. "I used to think it was because I knew hunger," he said. "Real, bone-deep hunger." Then he looked out the window. "But now I think, maybe it's because I never stopped cooking for someone who isn't here anymore." Lila nodded, eyes misty. "Maybe that's the secret," she whispered, "to love people through a plate. Even when they're not sitting at the table." The diner never won awards, but one rainy night, a woman left a note folded neatly under her plate. It simply read, "I didn't plan to live another week, but after this meal, I think I might try." The cook held the note in his hand for a long time. Then, without a word, tucked it into his notebook. Right beside his mother's photo, the seasons turned. Winter crept in softly that year, blanketing the world outside in hush and frost. Inside the diner, warmth pulsed like a steady heartbeat, low lights, soft jazz, cinnamon in the air. "It's the kind of place that made the cold wait outside," Lila began, lighting a small candle at each table during supper, saying it made the place feel like a memory. The cook didn't say much about it, but he never blew them out. One night, just before closing, the bell above the door chimed softly. A woman stepped in, holding the hand of a quiet little boy, small, wide-eyed, no more than 6. They sat at the far booth, the one tucked behind the jukebox. The cook looked over. His hand froze. The boy, the way he sat, the way his hands folded neatly on the table, it reminded him of someone, of himself. Lila brought over warm cornbread and apple butter, and turned to the cook with a gentle look. "They said they just moved to town. She's a nurse. He doesn't talk much." The cook nodded once, then began to cook not a dish on the menu, but something quieter. A stew with roasted garlic, softened onions, ribbons of kale, and chunks of sweet potato so tender they could fall apart. Just from kindness, He served it himself. When the boy took a bite, his eyes lit up. His shoulders softened. And just before the next spoonful, he did something unexpected. He smiled. It was small, but whole. After they left, Lila leaned on the counter, thoughtful. "You saw it, didn't you?" she whispered. The cook nodded like he'd tasted something he forgot he needed. Lila tilted her head. "He reminded you of yourself?" "Maybe," the cook said softly. "Or maybe he reminded me that. It wasn't just the food that saved me." Lila looked over. What was it then? The cook smiled. Someone noticing. That night, as the snow fell in sleepy spirals outside, the cook sat alone in the quiet diner. The notebook was open before him. It's filled now with dozens of notes, thank yous, confessions, hopes, tiny pieces of strangers who had left fuller than they came. And he realized, slowly, that the table he'd been setting all this time, the one in his heart, wasn't empty anymore, it was full. He closed the book, turned off the lights, and for the first time in years, he whispered something aloud to the quiet room. Not goodbye, just rest. Well, somewhere between midnight and dawn, the world became very quiet. Outside the diner, snowflakes floated like secrets from the sky, soft, slow, endless. The streets, usually bustling with life, now lay still, blanketed in silence and peace. Street lamps cast a golden glow across the snow, painting everything in a warm hush. Inside, the diner slept too. Tables wiped, lights dimmed, and chairs turned upside down. Only the little candle at the counter remained lit, flickering gently like a heartbeat refusing to leave. In the back room, the cook sat in his chair. He wasn't tired. Not quite, just. Still, he listened to the hum of the refrigerator, the far-off sound of tires crunching over snow, the soft creak of the floor as the building breathed. He closed his eyes, and in the darkness behind them, memories flickered like film reels, blurry, golden, worn at the edges, a boy with a too-small coat sitting alone at a table, a waitress with bright eyes and a voice like a lullaby sliding over a plate of food, a gentle laugh from the kitchen, the scrape of a spoon, and silence, not the scary kind, the comforting kind, the kind that holds you. He leaned forward, opened the old notebook once more. It was almost full now, page after page of moments. A kid who danced every time he had pancakes, a man who proposed with a ring in his milkshake, a teenager who came out to his dad in the booth by the window and left with a hug instead of silence. Every page was a story, and every story was a person, and every person had found a seat at the table. Even the cook, even him, far away. In a small apartment above a flower shop, Lila turned in her sleep, a small smile on her lips. Her dream was soft and slow and glowing, the kind of dream that didn't need words. And the little boy, the one who barely spoke, he sat at home under a thick blanket, watching snow fall from his window. In his lap, a small to-go container still warm. His mother had let him bring it home. It wasn't just food, it was warmth, and in his chest, something fluttered, a memory, a knowing that someone had seen him. The world is full of hungry hearts. Some hunger for food, some hunger for kindness, some hunger to be heard. Some just want a place to sit and not be asked why they're alone. And somewhere, down a sleepy street, past the glowing lights and shuttered shops, there's a little diner, where all of them, even just for a moment, are fed. So if you ever find yourself walking late at night, and the cold feels too loud, and the silence feels heavy, look for the place with one light still on, a single candle in the window step. Take a seat, don't worry if you don't know what to say. Someone will notice, someone always does. Now, close your eyes, breathe in slowly, let it out gently, let the warmth of the story curl around. You're like a blanket, you're safe here, you're seen, you're home. Good night, friend.